We have tracks in our state for the application. Therefore, we can pass them down to a new component that handles rendering them. We'll call this component our gallery component. Let's create a new gallery.jsx file within our source folder. Gallery.jsx. Now, let's add the default React component code and follow the same pattern that we have for our components before. We'll import React and the component from React. We'll import app.css. We'll declare the gallery class and extend component. And of course, we'll export the gallery by default as our default component. Now let's render onto the screen and return whatever JSX we need. For now, we'll just do a gallery div, and then we'll also console.log the gallery props. Cool. Let's include the gallery now after profile. Import gallery from, and make sure you do it in the string from gallery. Let's replace that div now with our actual gallery and say that we want the tracks to be passed as props through this application state. Here we go. Let's look up an artist. How about Billy Joel? So gallery props, we see some tracks, and there we go. And also, I'm noticing some styling. Sometimes this gets squished, so let's fix that right now. An easy fix is to go to the profile info, give it a flex display, so that way it always has a certain sizing. There we go. But now this makes the info a little askew. We need to change the flex direction now to columnar because it's a row by default, which aligns the other way. Finally, we can center things a little better with the justify content of center. Nice. Let's head back to the gallery component now, since we have props logging for us. In order to render all of these props in an array, we have to take advantage of the JavaScript map function again. First off, let's set a constant of tracks equal to this.props.tracks. Remember the ES6 trick we learned from last time? We can shorten this by just doing tracks within some braces and setting it to this.props. This will be useful if we had other keys and variables that we wanted to access as props and declare in one line. Now we can map over the tracks, and we can do so one track at a time. And we'll make sure to have our index as k already. We'll use that anonymous arrow function syntax. And for now, let's return an overall div with a key of k. Its class name shall be track. And then we'll have an image inside now with a self-enclosing tag. Its source will be track image, and we'll also give it a class name of track-image and an alternate of track. However, we need to declare this track image now, and we'll say that the const track image is equal to track.album.images, first element, .url. Now before we save this, remember we need to return all of this JSX within the map function, even though we're already returning it here within the render function, because this declares an entirely new scope. Moving on, we also want the name property, so let's declare a p tag for paragraph. The class name will be track text, and then we'll access the track name. All right, let's test it out. I have a Bruno Mars again. And look at all these tracks. So huge. We could definitely style these a little better. So let's head to app.css for some styling changes. Now we're in the gallery component, so I'm going to do command/ to comment. Our track is going to have a bit of styling. First off, we're going to change the width to 220 pixels, as well as a height to 220 pixels. We'll give it a border of 3 pixels solid and white, which is FFF in hexadecimal. We'll give it a border radius, just to round things out a little bit, of 3 pixels. We'll give it some padding of 10 pixels. Let's align all its text to the left. And here's a neat feature. Later on, I want to make it clickable, so I'll add a cursor component of pointer. Now our track image, it's still going to be so large. I only want it to be as big as the track. So we'll inherit the same width and height. We'll make both of them 220 pixels wide and 220 pixels tall. This one will have the same border of 3 pixels solid white. Its border radius will be 3 pixels. Of course, we'll make it object fit to cover, so it looks nice. And its position will be absolute. And before we move on, let's make all these tracks relative so they align side to side, so it looks nice. Our track needs to have a display of inline block. That's looking pretty good. And things are a little off-center, huh? Well, instead of having a padding on the inside, let's actually give it a margin on the outside so things are centered and spaced out. Also, I'm not sure if they need a border radius on the outside for the track actually, let alone a border. And that's actually looking perfect. Cool. I believe it's responsive as well, so let's go ahead and resize. And there you go. You can see all their tracks. Nice. Let's find an artist with some darker album covers, such as Michael Jackson. And there, that white background is looking really good. Now let's take care of the track text. We want to see the name of it, of course. So our track text will have a background color of black, a color of white, and what we're going to do is we're going to show the text over the image with a black rectangle behind it, so that way it stands out. That background needs 75% opacity, a width of 220 pixels, and we'll text align it to the center. And so it shows up over the relative tracks, we'll make its position absolute. Let's see if this is close enough. Now, it's looking pretty good. It's a little too wide though. I don't want it to cover the whole border. So if you make it 214, it's certainly smaller, but we need to give it a margin left, so that way it's actually centered of 3 pixels. Sweet. And then I want this to be not on the top, but on the bottom. So I'm going to set its bottom alignment to 0. Great. That's looking better. Let's do Bruno Mars again, just to see what his looks like. Very cool. All right, that was a lot of CSS. One more thing, why don't we just give this some padding so we can see that rectangle a little better. All right, that's looking pretty nice. Let's move on to actually making these tracks playable.